And welcome back to the Jody and Court podcast, where we shoot the shit with people we genuinely think kick ass. So, I mean, it makes sense that we have our moms back here because they clearly kick ass at life and everything in general. We are super stoked to have them back for a second podcast in a row. It became very apparent to Courtney and I that the last podcast was gaining some traction and getting a lot of engagement and starting a lot of conversations. So we thought, well, we might as well just roll with it and have them back. I think Courtney is going to share one of the more kind of impactful comments that we got on social media that kind of spurred us to make this decision to have them back again.
Yeah, sweet. So the last episode, if you didn't have a chance to watch it or listen, we just kind of dove straight into the body image topic and some of the struggles and where body image comes from. And we got a comment saying, another great episode, ladies. This topic speaks volumes to me, and I'm so thankful you are spreading the word of love for your body. It's crazy to think that all women, even our strong, beautiful moms, have felt such grief over their bodies. It's time for change, and you ladies are paving the way. So thank you guys for everything that you shared. Like, it really did have an impact. We got personal messages and like private messages, public messages, all sorts of messages coming in about how what you guys had to say really touched other women out there. And so we clearly are all in this journey together. So yeah, we'll keep rolling with that.
Keep rolling with the conversation.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just going to kick it off with like diving right into the body image conversation again. And the first question we have for you mamas is, what are your biggest fears around your body image? And what do you do to quiet those demons, those kind of fear-mongering voices that you hear when it comes to your body?
I'm going to let Pam go first this time.
Throwing you out there, Pam.
Yeah, Pam's always quite...
Well, I think that, when I was younger, like a young adult, I think my biggest fear was that I was never going to have the body that I wanted, that I was not going to, that I would never be the model, or I would never have, that look to me. And then as I got older and maybe a little bit more wiser, I realized it was more about being accepted. I was worried that I wasn't going to be accepted by other people if I didn't have that perfect body, right? The one that was portrayed in media and everything, right? And then, coming to the 50s is a very wonderful time of life, ladies, let me tell you, because you kind of forget that, you forget a lot of things. Yes, that's true. but you also don't really care what other people think. And that's when I really started to, I think my fears changed at that point, right? Because then I wasn't worried about how other people saw me and if they accepted me for how I looked, because I started to realize this was me and I was okay with that. So there's an aging component to that really helped. And then how did I quiet it? Well, when I was young, I couldn't quiet that voice. It was always present. And I can honestly say that, every time I was out in public, and I didn't mean for this to be happening, but every time I was around other people, I was subconsciously comparing myself to other people. Was I the biggest person in the room? Was I, the shortest, the tallest? I was always comparing my size to the size of others because I wasn't happy with myself. And that voice never went away, never. But now I practice, and when I say practice, I really mean practice. I practice gratitude. So, and I know this is something you guys have talked about before too, is, to just, find the good things about yourself or the good things in your life and be grateful for what you have already. And then you start noticing more and more all the time of the good things in yourself. When you're looking for good, you find good. But it took a long, long time to come to that.
That was very good, Pam. Now, probably, we talked about how we felt when we were younger, and I have to mirror what Pam said. I was the same, always wondering what everybody thinks about you. And now I'm like you. I really don't care. what they think, but I do care for my own self that I'm healthy and strong and can carry on and do all the things I want to do. But I have to say, at the back of my head, I still have that fear that as you get older, like you're talking 50s, I'm talking 60s, that I don't get that, what they call that matron figure, where it's natural to get that. Everybody's going to get it. And I have to say, I still fight that. Like, I don't want to have this matron look, because I don't think I'm a matron. I don't feel like I am. And so that is still at the back of my head, I have to say, like, that is there. And so to quiet that, to fight that, that's why I work out and I bike and I hike and I walk and I just keep moving, because I've stopped this where I'm not going to eat that because it might turn my figure matronly. I'm like, no, I'm going to eat that. I'm just going to go work out more. So I can eat that, and I'm not going to worry about it as much as I used to. Whereas before I would choose not to eat that certain thing because it's going to cause me to gain that weight where I don't want to gain it. But others, and to quiet it, I'm like you. It's there. It never really goes away. Depending what you're wearing, I find. You know, if you happen to put on something that actually makes you look pretty good, it's all the fit, and you know how we're all different, and you're short and you're this and you're that, and not everything fits everybody perfect. And you're wearing something like, oh, gee, that looks pretty good. And then the next day you put on something that shows your muffin top, and you're like, all of a sudden you're back in that spot again, cursing it. Yeah. So you're right, it never really goes away.
What about you, Jode? Like, okay, so we've got the 50s represented, the 60s represented.
So now at the 30s almost.
Let's dive down into the 30s.
Yeah, I am like the later 30s, getting close to 40.
Okay, well, let's call you the 40s and me the 20s.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not going to do that.
We need Charlotte back for the 20s.
Yeah. I definitely still struggle. Like, I still have that voice. I still find myself looking at myself in the mirror with a critical eye. But I think the difference is that now I can acknowledge that I'm doing it. I'm aware. It's an awareness thing. I'm aware that I'm doing it so I can stop myself from doing it. And I can have the conversation with myself about why, where am I in my head that I was spurred on to have that thought, or like, where did that thought come from? And then I can address that, right? Whether it's a fear of judgment at races, or whether it's a fear of not fitting in or living up to the standard that the ladies I run with set, those kinds of things. For me, when I was younger too, because it's always been an athletic thing for me with my body, it's been the 6-pack thing. It's like I want a 6-pack, and I've never had one. And I don't even know where that comes from. Like, I don't know why that was even a thought, or why that was even something I was striving for, but that's something I don't strive for anymore. So I chalk that up as a success in my body image journey, is that acknowledging that doesn't change who I am, or what I'm worth, or what I'm capable of doing. And I focus more on functionality now. So it's when I do core work, it's not to grow a 6-pack, it's to grow and strengthen all the stabilizing muscles that allow my body to run for miles and miles and miles without fatiguing. It's very purposeful, it's intentional, it's functional. So I think kind of changing the dialogue in my head around the why I'm doing something really shifts everything, and it makes it more enjoyable, right? Because if you're doing core work for hours on end, like constantly, and you still don't get a 6-pack, and the reason you're doing it is for a 6-pack, like, that's just defeating. But if your reason for doing whatever it is you're doing is more purposeful and intentional, and you know it's serving a purpose, it's more enjoyable to actually go through the motions of doing it. Quieting the voice, I think it goes a lot with what Pam said. I think gratitude is huge. I think acknowledging what you have and what you're grateful for and what your body is capable of doing, and just celebrating all those little things. Celebrations are so important, you guys. Like every day you should celebrate something about your life, your body, yourself. And it goes a long way, just like Pam said, it just attracts more, right? That law of attraction is, I don't know, it's life-changing when you make that, when you recognize that what you put out is what you attract, what you think is what comes about. I think just the language you use in your head, it's huge.
And the one that you always say that I think you got from Tony Robbins, trade your expectation for appreciation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. That's my favorite. I use that with my kids. They get it. My kids get it. They know the difference between an expectation and an appreciation. And that, like, that idea of when you are feeling frustrated or when you're feeling disappointed, it's because a certain expectation you had wasn't met. And if you can recognize that and be like, oh, I'm frustrated because I thought this was going to go this way, but it happened this way. And then you can just flip that to an appreciation, to a gratitude for what did happen, makes a big difference. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah. How about you, Court? We're very different with our bodies, so I love hearing how you think differently.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed, I'm like frantically writing notes over here of all of these things where I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna do a video about this later. Ooh, yeah, that. But it's neat. Like we talk about this in our course as well. But that idea of like creating a body that's going to serve you, and in your training, a six-pack doesn't serve you actually in your running. You know, like it looks good, but
I started like, talking about it as a six-pack in my legs. That's what I'm building.
Yeah, right.
On my legs.
Yeah. I think my fears are a lot like yours, Mom. Like I looking back, like when you said when you walk into a room, you're just immediately comparing yourself to other people. It's almost like you're like, I find that my brain, my mind tries to take over and like gain some sort of understanding of like a ranking system or something like that. I can't quite put it into words, but there's definitely a lot of comparison. And then it's out of that comparison that I find that I start to get fears about my body. And it's interesting because my body has changed. Like I've had different sort of, I've been different weights in my life, and looking back at every single one of them, even right now, and this is the fittest I feel like I've ever been in my life thus far. There's always been that comparison, so it's almost like prevented me from being fully content with who I am at that moment. So I said last time in the last podcast how this is like the fittest I've been, and yet now I'm like, oh, now I need to look more like Jody, who's ripped in the leg, or you know what I mean, like, or something like that. Then it's like okay, you've won this race, but now it's like time to like, okay, cool. Now you have to like look like this and make, you know, and just keep going. And it is those demons. Those are my demons for sure. So there we go. I figured that out. My demons. In terms of quieting the demons, different things have worked for me at different times in my life. Like for example, last year I couldn't run enough. Running was super quieting for me, and but this year my body doesn't have the desire to run, and right now in my life I literally cannot meditate enough. Like if I could just bail from my life for like 2 hours a day and sit in my little like sanctuary room, which is the spare bedroom, and just go inward, I would. And I found even this morning, it wasn't body image issues, but I had some really negative voices in my head, like yicky voices. And I had to just excuse myself and sit and first, I was telling my mom this a little bit earlier today. It was a neat process to see in terms of that letting go of the voice. So I had to allow myself to be angry I had to feel the anger in order to be able to let it go. And so it's almost like feeling that, hearing that voice, acknowledging it and feeling into it, even if it's not what you want to end up feeling like I didn't want to be angry, but I had to really feel angry first. And then once I fully felt the anger, for me, I know when I'm cracking, when I cry. And I started crying, and it was a process. And so I was breaking free, and those demons little by little were exiting my body. And then once I cried, I felt like I could breathe. Once I breathed, I felt like I could move. And so that for me is this really interesting process that I'm learning in my life right now, but doable in a smaller amount of time. That took me about an hour today, but my voices were nasty today. There's been times where I feel it coming on, and if I can catch it quick enough, I'll just be like, I'm out of here for like 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, I'll be right back. And even if I'm alone with Michaela, I'm like, here, Michaela, storyline online, watch a story, I'll be right back. And that just taking and popping in my earbuds, even to listen to an upbeat song, is long enough, and if you can catch it soon enough. So that's been the biggest thing that's been helpful for me lately.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love how we all do things just slightly different, right? Which just volumes to everybody out there listening, right? That what works for me, what works for my mom, what works for Pam, what works for Courtney, is those are just all options, and there's so many ways to navigate this, that it's really just sitting with yourself and listening to your own body and your own heart and finding what works best for you.
And even what worked last month maybe isn't what works, or yesterday isn't, you know what I mean? And not pigeonholing yourself into I have to do it this way, otherwise it's not going to work, because maybe that's not the best way in that time.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to question 2. I got it ready here. How have you come to learn, or what are things that you do to differentiate between your internal voice of guidance and those exterior voices that are trying to disguise themselves as your own?
Do I get to go first again?
You do. I had to really struggle with this one. I thought, what? This is complicated. What is she asking me?
Well, hey man, you guys graduated to episode 2, so we're up in the game here.
Okay, well, I'll go. I've got it. I can differentiate pretty easily at this point in my life now. I know that my higher self, or the voice of guidance, the good voice, literally is loving and caring and forgiving and gentle with me, right? The comments that come from my higher self, the ones are always on a positive nature. And the ones that come from my ego, from that part of me which is not the good part, are not. They're the ones that are putting me down, and you're not good enough. And they're harsh and they're demeaning. And, it's now I can see that in my life, that I can, when I get that really harsh thought that comes into my head about how I look or what I said, or did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Then I can see that as a voice that I can dismiss. I acknowledge that I have those feelings. Okay, yeah, it's still there. Thank you very much for, sharing that with me. And then there was somebody who told me a while back, imagine it like you were able to put that on a stick in a river. And then you can just let it flow by and go. And so it really actually works. Or, you put it in a balloon and you watch it float away. But you're basically acknowledging that you have that negative voice. And then just realizing that that's all it is. It's just a negative comment, let it go. And then replace it with something positive, right? So instead of saying, oh, I really shouldn't have said that. It was really, I think it was maybe stupid and they didn't like what I said. I can go, okay, well, there's an opinion. But you know what? They stayed and they talked to me and they laughed. And so really it wasn't that bad, or whatever the case may be, right? So that's sort of how I know the difference.
And I'm actually along those lines as well. I just have to remind myself that this isn't the voice that I want to listen to. So I basically almost the same thing as what Pam said. And now as you get older, it seems like it seems easier to dismiss those negative thoughts and bring in the positive ones, and just remind myself that I don't have to look perfect. I don't have to have the six pack, but I'm the same way. Boy, I've been striving for one of those, but it's just not going to happen. But as long as I'm strong and healthy and fit, that's what's important. And so if I miss the one day, I used to kick myself and be so mean to myself if I missed one day of a workout out of 5 in a row. And now I don't do that anymore. I think it's okay that you missed it. Obviously your body needed a break, and you just give yourself a break. And so I don't stress about it like I used to. But I have to say, I watched this thing on the news last night, and now that's my next thing to try. This football player, you guys, oh my God. He had big legs, and I'm like, I got big legs. Maybe I can do that. He did these push-ups, okay? So he was kneeling down. Somebody was holding his calves, and he was going down and not using his arms. It was all the strength from his hamstrings.
What?
It was absolutely, I'm like, Tony, come and look at this.
Oh my God.
And he was a football player from one team in the States. And that's what he was doing at home, showing his kids. And his one little daughter was there running around as this trainer guy or whoever was holding his legs. And he could do about 6 of them. And the 6th one, he was struggling to get back up. And I'm like, whoa, I want to try that. And Tony goes, I don't think I could do that. And I'm like, I don't think I could do. I'd fall right on my face. I'd have to have a pillow on the floor just in case. But those are the things that keep me going now. See how strong I can be, what I can do. How many pull-ups can I do today? That kind of thing.
That's cool.
Anyway, I digress, but boy, you guys, that was impressive. It was so impressive.
Like mother, like daughter. This is where I get it from.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, I love that. Now I'm all distracted, but I had some things that I wanted to say
Sorry.
after, based on what you guys said. Now I'm all distracted by this, push-up.
There's one thought while you regain your thoughts, Jody. There's one thing that just popped into my mind, which is someone I've heard it said before. Would you ever say that to your best friend? So the words that you're saying to yourself, would you ever in a million years say that to your best friend? And I love that as a really quick, easy self-check to be able to differentiate, is that my loving voice, or is that the nasty demons? Yeah. Or also too, is that the external, or is that all the external, you should? Because to be honest, to your best friend, you probably wouldn't say, oh, well, you should be like this. You would say, you love your best friend or your sister or someone who's special to you, or your kid, right? Yeah. If you're, for moms out there, you would typically, that unconditional love. Yeah. So anyways, that popped into my mind.
Yeah. And then it's that idea of the wolf you feed, right?
Yeah.
It's the one that grows, right? So if you've got, on this side, that wolf of doubt and self-criticism and, frustration and anger and comparison. And then you've got the loving wolf, right? The one that you feed is the one that grows. And that's what I was thinking about when both of you were talking, is that what you pay the most attention to is what you see more of. It goes back to the same thing you said before, Pam, right? And then if you're paying more attention and giving more of a response to the loving, caring, supportive voice, then that's what grows. You start to hear that more. I find I don't really hear that critical voice nearly as much anymore because I don't give it any attention. And I think if you stop giving it the attention that your ego wants to give it, it just gets quieter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think part of it is knowing, right? You have to pay attention to the thoughts so that, when you have that thought, you go, okay, this is, that's that thought. Now we're going to replace it with a good thought, right? And once you start acknowledging that and recognizing that and making it a bit of a habit, it really works. Really, really works well.
Do you remember what Mary Morrissey said, Mom? How learning the voice of your intuition, when you don't know. So she made the comparison of when you pick up the phone and it's your mom on the phone, she doesn't have to say, hi, it's your mom calling, because all she has to say is hello, because you recognize her voice. And so you're, oh, who's this, right? But with the voice of our intuition, sometimes we don't recognize it because we have all of the other chitter-chattery voices that we've learned to come to know better than our inside voice. And so going back to what you were saying too before, that it's a practice, and it's a practice of listening and figuring out, oh, was that voice, or oh, was that this voice? And little by little it starts to come, and you get to recognize the voice on the other end of the phone, because you interact with it more often, is what Mary Morrissey said. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same as, if you not even talking about body image, just being, whether you let negative thoughts about anything fill your head versus positive thoughts.
Yeah.
And the more positive thoughts you can have, then it pushes away the negative thoughts, I think, for anything, for life in general.
Yeah, and tapping into that inner voice of guidance is like, it's where a lot of athletes get into trouble, because you have, and for myself as well, I have a running coach, so I have a schedule, I have a plan, 6 days a week, I'm supposed to do all these things, and sometimes my body tells me otherwise, and I've had to really, I got to a point where I had to just like call my coach and say, is it okay? Like, I needed him to give me permission to listen to my own voice and my own body. And I said, is it okay if I go for a bike ride or a cross country ski or do something else on some of these days? And he was like, yeah, like, why not? Like, it was like obvious to him that was an okay answer. But to me, it was like, but it says to run, so I must run, right? So today I had a 55-minute run I was supposed to do, and the kids and Ryan and I went for a mountain bike instead, because my body just really did not need to run today. And that's okay. And athletes get into lots of trouble, and that's when we get injured, because we're listening to the external stuff that says you should do this, 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 and this. And we're not tapped into our bodies, and what our bodies are saying to us is like, no, whoa, like, take a day off, do something different. Yeah.
So Jody, I'm way up on you on this, because I am not an athlete. I've listened to my body for years. Don't run. And I go, okay, I won't run today.
I love it. My mother-in-law would agree with you.
Listen, if you see me running, you better run fast, because there's something chasing me.
I love it. Okay, so now I'm really excited. We have a couple questions that we asked our audience on social media, that if they had anything they wanted us to talk about, to share those questions with us. So I have 2 questions that I'm going to share that come from our audience. So one lady asked, what impact does body image have on your feeling of self-worth? And what's that connection between body image and self-worth? Because they're 2 different things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when I was younger, it was totally connected for me.
Yeah.
You know, my self-worth was tied to everything about my body. And because I had a negative voice that was playing all the time about it, and, you know, like I was saying, you know, I was comparing myself. Yeah, it was 100%. But now, through practicing and through just like, you know, time of my life, it's not as important. It's not as connected anymore. But yeah, definitely, it was full on at one point.
And I would agree with Pam on that one. I was the same. Like, I was so focused on my body being the way it should be, because you're 5'1", you should look like this, you should weigh this much. And for sure, it was connected. And then as I got older, you realize that it isn't as important. And I think that just comes with life and experience. And now I would say I want to remain strong and fit, and whether that's my self-worth or just how I just want to be, because I want to be able to carry on and do things. I think watching my really, really strong father, watching his health deteriorate and him become so weak, that's part of my motivation to stay strong, because I just, that just threw me that, oh gee, that can happen, and look how quickly that happened in a few months. Mm-hmm. So that is that's back there somewhere, and it's not necessarily my self-worth, but just that I don't want to be like that. I don't want that to happen. I mean, it might just happen and I might not have any control over it. But what I can control right now, I think it's more controlling than my self-worth. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, I want to be in control. I don't want something else to control me. But on the other hand, you could have disease, there's many things that can happen that can throw a loop in it. But I want to be able to control what I can control now. So that's just to be strong and healthy. And if I look okay along with it, then fine. But I'm not stressing about how I look. It's just how I feel inside.
It's so important to make that distinction between what you can control and what you can't control. And we talk about it with our kids all the time. They get so frustrated and upset about something. And it's like, okay, but you have no control over that. That was somebody else's choice, somebody else's decision. So what do you have control over? And it's such a great lesson to learn to look at the world that way, because it can prevent a ton of frustration. And it's that expectation and appreciation thing again, right? Where you expected somebody else to behave this way, or you expected this result. But being able to focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I know self-worth too, for me, body was definitely linked to self-worth, but lots of other things were linked to self-worth too in an unhealthy way. So academics was linked to my self-worth. If I wasn't the top student.
That's for sure. Started in grade 1.
Right? If I wasn't the top student, if I didn't get the highest mark, or I remember feeling so awful about myself when somebody would beat me on a test in school. And so I think there's so much conversation to have around self-worth and all the things that kind of unhealthily influence the worth that we feel. Heather Davis put it really perfectly, actually, in one of her comments on our YouTube channel, Courtney, and I'm probably not going to be able to remember it verbatim, but Heather Davis had said something along like, when she looks at a person, she doesn't see their body or their academics or their, like, she just sees how they show up in the world. And that's how she judges a person, is just how are they showing up in the world. And I think that's really beautiful in terms of self-worth. If you can look at yourself and be like, well, how am I showing up in the world? And link your self-worth to that, your intentions, your love, your caring, your kindness towards other people. Yeah.
Yeah, and then tying it back into the body. Is my body serving me in doing that? It's kind of neat to flip it, like, versus body creating that self-worth. Decide what your self-worth is, and then ask yourself, is the body supporting you in being that type of person?
Because it's okay to have goals. It's okay to want to get your body stronger. It's okay to set body image goals if they're coming from a healthy place with a healthy intention. Yeah. Cool. Do you have anything you want to add to that before I ask the next question?
No, I think that was really well said.
This is a really great question, you guys. This is a question that I often ask people just in terms of health and wellness conversations. What would you tell your younger self? Like, what advice, if you could go back and have a conversation with the younger Pam, the younger June, what would you say?
I know what I would say, and I said it before in our last one. I would tell myself, it's okay that you're only 5'1" and that you're not petite little teeny thing. And don't waste all your time worrying and stressing about it, that you don't weigh this certain weight. Because I wasted so much time worrying about that. So that would be my number one thing to tell my younger self. Like, just be okay with who you are and go out and have fun and enjoy life. Don't stress about these things for so long. Don't waste time.
I totally agree. Yeah. I would say be gentle on yourself, right? Don't be so harsh on yourself. We're all different, and we all know that we're different, but for some reason, we've got it in our head that we have to be a certain way. And if I could tell my 20-year-old self, it would be, take a breath, look at the good things in your life, and it's all going to work out. You know, it's only one small thing in your life, even though it's always constantly in our head.
Do you think it's something to do with being the older daughter thing? Like we all are
Yeah.
the oldest girl in the family. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly, I think I would say exactly the same thing to my younger self, is to not waste time, to just, it's actually not important.
Yeah.
Right? It's you think it is, like you think it's everything because you think everybody else is thinking about it, but actually nobody else is thinking about it, and it's just you that's thinking and obsessing about your body, and to just not waste that time. And I could have had way more fun in my younger years if I didn't stress out and focus and obsess so much about those things.
Well, it's like Pam said,
you said,
don't sweat the small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what you said, Jody. I think that telling my younger self as well that people really don't care. You know, people's thoughts about you are really not what you think they are, right? I was always obsessing over what people were thinking, and really everybody else is thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about, you know, me, right? You know, they had their own lives and their own issues, but I always figured that it was, you know, that they were, and that stressed me out, that they were, you know, somehow what I did, what I said, how I looked, was important to them. And I'm not saying that I'm not important, but you know, everybody has their own lives, and to tell that young me to say, you know, people aren't worrying about you and thinking about you that way, not in a bad way, but just in a way that I could relax.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Totally.
She's freezing.
Right?
It's like the best frozen image.
There.
Too.
It was a good frozen image, Pam. It was perfect.
Court, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective?
I don't feel like I'm old enough to answer this question yet. That's like a wisdom question. I think I would tell myself, I would tell myself, buy the damn skinny jeans, because that was a fear that I had when I was younger. Is when skinny jeans, with my friends anyways, started to become really popular. I thought I was I thought my pear shape that I get in my, like the Kovac pear shape, was not conducive to wearing skinny jeans. And it took me a long time, and my sister actually forcing me to try a pair on while we were shopping one time, and forced me to buy them. And that's actually all I wear now, are like tights, and as I find them comfortable. And but that was an eye-opening experience for me, that holy smokes, actually these look really good on me. And so I think I would tell myself, my younger self, get over your damn pride and just try them on if you want to wear them.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So to close everything off, we want to, if you guys could leave a little token, a little nugget by answering this question, a little nugget for the viewers. Can you recommend to the listeners something that they could do in 5 minutes or less, so that it's easy enough to do frequently or every day? Something that could serve them in their journeys with their own body image.
Okay, I'll go. Again, I'm going to go back to finding something positive. And my trick is, well, I'm a sleeper. It's my superpower. And so when I wake up in the morning, it takes me a little bit of time to get out of bed. But what I do is, before I ever get out of bed, I try and list 5 things that are positive, either about me or my family or my situation. And it can be anything. You know, if you're talking body image, you know, lay there and be grateful that I've got little tiny wrists, I've got really great hair, I have a great smile. And you start your day by choosing the positive things that you love about yourself. And if you don't love anything about yourself, then find something that you just like about yourself. And then it gets easier. And then every day, try and find something different. And before you know it, it'll be a habit where you are seeing all of these wonderful things about yourself instead of looking at the negative.
That's cool.
Well, and I have for the last few years, because I was always beating myself up. Oh, you missed a workout day, you missed this. I keep a fitness journal. So, and I put everything in there. And now I'm on week 356. I'm on my fourth journal probably. And I that's something you could
That's
buy me if you ever wanted the girls to buy me something.
Mother's Day.
And so I just, even if I just go for a walk, if I go for a bike ride, everything counts. Before it was like, oh, I didn't work at the gym for 40 minutes. I can't write it in. Now it's like anything goes in there. So the other day I didn't get up and do my workout in the morning because it just wasn't in me. But I did go for a long bike ride. So everything counts. And it just makes me, and I look at it once in a while, I'll flip through it. And then even if I have a break, okay, I went on a 2-week holiday. I didn't do anything. That's great. No problem now. And I'll look through it and say, oh, gee, like, holy cow, look at all the stuff I did this time. So it just helps me be more positive about myself and that, yes, you've accomplished a lot and you're not going to beat yourself up because you didn't work out 5 days in a row. But look, you did this and this and this. So I put everything in there and it just, it helps.
I love that. I didn't know.
I have a fitness
didn't
journal.
know that
And you know what else I have? Is I started a gardening journal now too.
Oh yeah,
When I went to the greenhouse last year and that guy said he had his grandmother's gardening journal. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have a gardening journal. And it's so helpful from year to year. I did this last year and boy, that tanked. That didn't work. And so I tried something else. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's very
that's
cool.
brilliant.
It is brilliant.
Yeah.
I have a quick piece of advice or recommendation. I would suggest trying to replace a word that you use that is critical. That is like we all have like the word or the phrase or whatever pops up and runs on, repeat through our head. Try to acknowledge what that is and replace it. Just pick one really awesome kick-ass word that like pumps you up about how you feel about yourself and try to use it as much as possible in your like speaking with other people, in your inner thoughts. And not only will that start to change how you actually see yourself, because when you start using those words, they turn into like beliefs about yourself. You don't even have to change anything about yourself. If you just change the words you use to describe yourself, everything else changes. It just kind of snowballs. But it also will change how everybody else around you views you. When you just change the words that you're using, it's going to impact everybody else around you. And it's so easy to do. Just pick one word and use the crap out of it.
Love it. I love that. Mine is that, so I'll represent the moms where you have no time, but maybe 5 minutes to take care of yourself in a day. To ask the question, what can I do for myself in the next 5 minutes? Because to me, as a mom of a toddler, that feels manageable. Taking 5 minutes. And then if I only get 5 minutes done of self-care in a day, if that's the time that I have, and I take 5 minutes to curl my hair, or I take 5 minutes to do a 5-minute HIIT workout, or I take 5 minutes to literally do like a sun salutation, whatever it is, or meditate or something, then just like you, June, like that's good enough. That gets to go in my journal. And the 5 and just, yeah, using 5 minutes to do anything that makes you feel good. Yeah. I love that question. That's a Mary Morrissey question again. What can you do in the next 5 minutes to get yourself one step closer to living the dream life that you're dreaming up?
Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I guess we should end it here then. Thank you guys again for coming back. I liked this episode even better.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative.
Yeah, I think I wrote down self-worth in a big box, and I think the next time you guys are on, we should go into the self-worth domain, because you're right. It's like, I mean, that there's so much that ties into self-worth, and body image is just like one of the spokes of self-worth. But there's so many other things. So that's kind of cool. I hope you guys will come back again.
Now that you're famous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, now that you're famous.
You're gonna have a fan club.
And for those of you guys who took the time to watch the video or listen to it as an audio version, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking that time, and we just ask that you could help us to keep sharing the amazing words of our moms. So you can do that by liking the video, liking the page, subscribing to the YouTube channel, sharing the video, passing it along. If someone pops into your mind as you're listening to this, it's probably because they would benefit from hearing it too. So feel free to share it with anybody that you like. Leave us comments, send us private messages. It was so invigorating reading the comments this last week, and especially getting like personal private messages sent to us. Clearly our moms are wise beyond our years. And yeah, so that's it for this episode. To sign us out, or actually next week we're going to be doing is it next week, Joan? Yeah. With yeah, so we're going to be doing a really interesting episode with Kennedy Shortreed, who is a doula, and we're going to be talking in the ballpark of being a mom and becoming, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So you'll definitely want to tune in for that. It'll come out next Sunday. And in the meantime, do what you can today. Take the step that you can take to living that dream life that you're dreaming up.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.